Most of us walk into a garden store every spring, buy a spray bottle, and the pests come back anyway. You're not doing it wrong. That's just how the industry trained us. Treat the symptom, not the garden. My grandmother didn't use sprays. She grew 7 specific plants. No labels, no chemicals. And by midsummer, her tomatoes were cleaner than anything at the farmer's market. Science has now caught up with her. Today, I'm giving you her exact map. Quick disclosure. This video uses an AI-assisted voiceover so I can publish more often. The research, plant choices, and methods are all mine. Before we dive in, 3 mistakes I see every single week. 1. Spraying after rain, which washes everything away. 2. Planting one of these in the wrong spot, so the chemistry never reaches the pests. And 3. Pulling out the single most powerful plant on this list, because most people think it's a weed. We'll fix all 3. Plant number 5 has been used in Southeast Asia for 300 years. And lab trials show it can disrupt a pest's reproductive cycle. Plant number 6? Most people pull it out thinking it's a weed. That's a mistake costing them a whole season of free pest control. Stay with me. You're going to walk away with an exact map. Who goes where, how far apart, and what's safe around your kids and pets. Now, science backs this up with lab and greenhouse trials. But real gardens are messier than lab chambers. So I'll show you exactly what translates to your backyard and what you can ignore. Grab a pen. Write this down. Here's what we're covering. First, why planting a few herbs next to your tomatoes usually doesn't work. And what the science actually says you need to do instead. Second, 6 specific compounds behind these plants, explained so simply anyone can follow along. No jargon, just chemistry that makes sense. And third, a printable map. 7 plants, exact spacing, right placement, and every safety note for kids and pets. We're ranking these from effective to extraordinary. Plant number 1 is probably already in your kitchen. Plant number 7 has field trial data going back decades. And it's the one plant extension services across the country all agree on. A quick heads up before we list the plants, while these are natural, some aren't pet-friendly. I'll flag exactly which ones you need to keep away from dogs and cats as we go. Plant 1. Basil. Plant number 1. Basil. You probably have it on your windowsill right now. Here's what most people don't know. Basil doesn't just smell good. It releases a compound called estragole. Think of it like this. Estragole jams an aphid's nervous system the same way water gets into a keyboard and makes the keys stick. The aphid loses muscle control. It can't feed properly. Lab records from the FAO show 100% cotton aphid mortality and 3 microliters per milliliter of basil essential oil. That's a sealed chamber study. Concentrated oil, controlled conditions. In your garden, you're not getting those concentrations. But the mechanism is real. And research suggests aphids tend to prefer other locations when basil is planted at proper density. Here's how to use it. Plant basil 10 to 12 inches apart among your tomatoes and peppers. Let it flower. Don't always pinch it back. The flowers attract hoverflies, and hoverfly larvae eat aphids. 1 basil plant gives you the chemistry and the reinforcements. And yes, you can still eat it. That's the lazy gardener bonus. One safety note. Fresh basil in your kitchen? Completely fine. The concentrated essential oil form is a different story for pets. Keep that away from cats and dogs. Growing the plant in the garden is safe. Quick one before plant 2. If you're tired of doing things the hard way, I share a new lazy gardening method backed by research every single week. Hit subscribe and the bell so you don't miss the next one. Now, on to plant number 2. Plant 2. Lavender. Plant number 2. Lavender. Most people plant it for the smell. Smart gardeners plant it because it works a double shift. Lavender contains linalool. Here's the analogy I use. Linalool is like a traffic light that turns green and red at the same time. A mosquito or aphid's nervous system gets contradictory signals. It can't coordinate movement. A 2021 lab study found linalool fractions produced LC50 values of 36 to 37 parts per million. That's against 3 different mosquito species larvae. Real number, real methodology. Lavender grows as a perennial in USDA zones 5 through 9. Planted as a border, 24 to 36 inches apart. It comes back every year. You plant it once, and for the next several seasons, it's working the perimeter of your beds. Safety flag here. Lavender is ASPCA listed as a concern for cats in concentrated form. The linalool that makes it effective is the same compound that can cause problems if a cat ingests a lot of the plant. Or the concentrated oil. Growing lavender in the garden, away from where cats chew on it, that's fine. Don't apply concentrated lavender oil anywhere a cat will groom it off. Plant 3. Rosemary. Plant number 3. Rosemary. Here's a fact that surprises most people. Rosemary is on the EPA's minimum risk pesticide list. That means the agency has reviewed it and determined it poses minimal risk to human health and the environment when used properly. Rosemary contains 1,8-cineol. Think of it as breathing in too much gasoline vapor in a closed space. The pest's neural coordination goes haywire. But here's what makes rosemary stand out from most sprays. A 2021 study found that at 4% essential oil concentration, 80% of spider mites died. But only 16% of the predator mite, Phytociulus persimilis, were affected at the same dose. Rosemary kills the pest and largely spares the predator hunting for you. Rosemary is a perennial in zones 7 through 10. Plant it as a hedge border, 18 to 24 inches apart for a low hedge, or 24 to 36 inches for a fuller spread. Evergreen, drought-tolerant, and it gives you fresh rosemary for cooking year-round. One planting, many seasons. So those are your first 3. A kitchen herb that jams aphid nerves, a perennial border that runs interference on mosquitoes, and an EPA-listed hedge that kills mites while protecting the predators working for you. Plant them once, let them establish. The chemistry is already baked in. But here's the thing. There's a plant in the next group that beats all 3 for sheer spider mite kill rate in lab conditions. And it's the ingredient in the lemongrass tea you might have in your cabinet right now. Plant 4. Lemongrass. Plant number 4. Lemongrass. The compound driving its pest-fighting ability is called citral. Citral works a bit like solvent fumes in a closed room. Enough of it, and an insect's neural and hormonal signals start misfiring. Larvae can't develop properly. Adults lose coordination. Larvae can't develop properly. Adults lose coordination. A 2011 study in the Journal of Economic Entomology found massive spider mite mortality up to 100%. That was at just 5 to 10 microliters per liter of air in fumigation conditions. Sealed chamber number. I want to be clear about that. But the mechanism operates on the same chemistry, just at lower concentrations in your garden. And there's field data too, though it's for mosquitoes, not spider mites. A 2025 study published in Nature Scientific Reports tracked 68 volunteers in Burkina Faso. Those using a 2.5% lemongrass essential oil mixture experienced roughly 97% fewer Anopheles mosquito bites compared to the control group. That is field data. Real conditions, real people. Critical safety note here. Lemongrass is ASPCA listed as toxic to dogs, cats, and horses. The compounds in the plant can cause serious issues if a pet eats it. Plant lemongrass where your pets can't graze on it. Keep concentrated lemongrass oil away from animals entirely. Lemongrass grows as a perennial in zones 9 through 11 outdoors. In colder zones, grow it in a large container and bring it in before first frost. Space clumps 24 inches apart. One clump can reach 2 to 3 feet wide in a season. Plant 5. Tulsi, holy basil. Still with me? Good. Plant 5 is the one I teased at the start. Southeast Asia. 300 years of documented use. Tulsi, holy basil. Tulsi contains multiple active compounds, including estragole, same family as regular basil. But the seed extract has shown a different kind of effect. A 2020 pot study showed up to 100% mortality of mustard aphid, Lipaphis erycemi, at 4% seed extract. In pot trial conditions. The proposed mechanism can disrupt the aphid's reproduction cycle, not just its nervous system. In traditional Indian, Thai, and Indonesian kitchen gardens, Tulsi wasn't just medicine. It was planted at the corners and entrances of vegetable beds, placement that modern companion planting research is now validating. Grow it in containers 12 to 18 inches apart. It's annual in cold climates, perennial in zones 10 and 11. Plant 6. Stinging nettle. Plant number 6. This is the one most of you have pulled out of your garden, thinking it was just a nuisance weed. Stinging nettle. Urtica dioica. Stop pulling it. Here's why this plant is different from every other plant on this list. It does not repel pests. It does something more powerful. It feeds an army that hunts pests for you. A 2007 Belgian field study found that nettle strips in field margins hosted 6 to 15 aphid predator species, versus 0 to 4 on crop plants alone. Natural nettle stands supported up to 89 predators per sample, versus 17 to 20 in wheat or pea crops. Think of it this way. Nettle isn't a soldier. It's a dormitory for your garden's standing army. Ladybugs, hoverflies, parasitic wasps, they need somewhere to live and find food early in the season before your crops are even under attack. Nettle gives them that. You're not hiring mercenaries, you're building barracks. And you're getting a premium pest control service completely free. Instead of dropping $20 to $30 a bottle at the hardware store every few weeks. Now, Critical instructions. Nettle stings. Every time you work near it, long sleeves and gloves, non-negotiable. And the rhizome spreads aggressively. You must contain it. Plant it in a contained patch at least 10 feet from your main beds, or sink a physical root barrier. Check your state's invasive species list before planting. 6 plants down, 3 familiar kitchen herbs, a tropical powerhouse, a 300-year tradition, and a weed that's actually a free pest control service. But plant number 7 has multi-decade field data, and it's the only one in this list that keeps working for the season after it's gone. That one's next. Plant 7. Marigold. Plant number 7. Marigold. Tagetes patula. And this one earns the extraordinary slot for 3 reasons: the research depth, the pest range, and the fact that it works even when it's no longer alive. Marigold roots produce a compound called alpha-terthienyl. Here's the analogy. Think of it like a magnifying glass focusing sunlight onto paper. Except the paper is the inside of a soil nematode, and the sunlight activates the compound into a form of singlet oxygen that tears through the nematode cells. It only activates with light, which is why the roots need to be in soil where some light penetrates. And why marigold density matters. A 2020 study in PLOS 1 by Fabric and colleagues found marigolds reduced whitefly egg laying by 94% on plants, compared to controls in greenhouse trials. A review by Hooks and colleagues in Applied Soil Ecology documented 50 to 90% reduction in root knot nematodes when marigold is used as a dense cover crop across multiple decades of trials. These are not lab-only numbers. The nematode data comes from real field and greenhouse conditions over decades. And here is the most important thing I'm going to tell you in this entire video. The way most YouTube videos tell you to use marigolds is wrong. Scattering a few marigold plants between your tomatoes, that is not how this works. You need a dense block. Or better, use marigold as a cover crop before your main planting. Cover the entire bed. Let it grow for 2 to 3 months. Then till it in and plant your cash crop. Field trial data suggests nematode suppression can carry into the following season. Spacing for the dense block method, 8 to 12 inches apart. Cover the full bed. Marigold is an annual, but it reseeds. If you let the flower heads go to seed at season end, which means in many climates it comes back on its own. Plant once, let it naturalize, and you build nematode suppression that compounds year over year. All right, here is your Who Goes Where map. Pause this if you want to screenshot it. Basil, interspersed in tomato and pepper beds or containers, 10 to 12 inches apart. Targets aphids. Annual, safe for garden. Keep concentrated oil from pets. Lavender, perimeter border, 24 to 36 inches. Mosquitoes and aphids. Perennial, zones 5 through 9. Caution, linalool toxic to cats in concentrated form. Rosemary, perimeter hedge, 18 to 36 inches. Whitefly, aphids, spider mites. Predator safe. Perennial, zones 7 through 10. EPA, minimum risk listed. Lemongrass, corner clump or large container, 24-inch clumps. Spider mites and mosquitoes, zones 9 through 11 or container. Warning, ASPCA Toxic to dogs, cats, horses. Tulsi. Container near beds, 12 to 18 inches. Aphids. Annual in cold zones. Safe for culinary use. Stinging nettle. Field margin only. At least 10 feet from main beds. Contained patch. Not a repellent. Banker plant. Supports 6 to 15 predator species. Perennial. Zones 3 through 10. Full protective gear always. Check your state's invasive list. And marigold. Dense block or pre-plant cover crop full bed, 8 to 12 inches. Root knot nematodes and whitefly. Annual. Reseeder. Safe, but monitor for spider mite harboring on some cultivars. Shown in trials to reduce pest pressure. Not a guaranteed eliminator. Always monitor and combine with IPM practices. 7 plants, 1 growing season. And if you place them correctly, you've planted a system that research shows can significantly reduce pest pressure in your garden. Through chemistry, through ecology, and through the kind of slow, persistent biology that a spray bottle can never replicate. The spray bottle treats symptoms. These plants change the conditions. Let's bring it home. These plants are not magic. They don't guarantee a pest-free garden. What they do is shift the odds, consistently, measurably, in ways that peer-reviewed science has been confirming for the past 10 to 20 years. Not every plant repels. Basil, lavender, rosemary, lemongrass, and tulsi work through specific named compounds: estragole, linalool, 1,8-cineol, citral. Nettle works by building your garden's predator population. Marigold works underground before you even plant your main crop. My grandmother didn't know the words alpha-terthienyl or estragole, but she planted marigold borders, kept rosemary at the gate, and grew nettles along the fence. She was right, not by luck, but because 2,500 years of farming had already worked this out. Science just finally caught up and wrote it down. And by midsummer, when your tomatoes are clean and your cabbage isn't lace, your neighbor, let's call him Bob, the one still refilling the backpack sprayer, is going to lean over the fence and ask what on earth you're doing. The answer is almost nothing. That's the point. Before you go, drop a comment right now. Are you team marigold, team nettle, or team rosemary? Tell me which one you're planting first this week. I'll be replying to comments all day, and the most popular pick shapes the next deep dive video. One last thing. None of these pest-fighting plants will work if your soil is quietly starving them out. The video on your screen right now covers the biggest soil mistake most gardeners make, and how to fix it for free. Click right there, and I'll see you over there. Happy gardening.